items, old business best practice checklist. What action item what do we need to do with this?
We need to discuss it.
Okay. Councilman Castle.
I raised a number of issues as it relates to the best practices worksheet. Before we begin, I'd like to know, it was stated last week that there's a dollar amount attached to this best practices worksheet. Can we just get what that dollar amount is?
It's about $8,000.
Okay, so I know it probably seems like a trivial task for $8,000, but if we're going to submit answers to the state, I want to ensure that they're accurate, and I'm sure that some of my other colleagues do as well. There are a few issues that I had. I raised them the last meeting, but I'll start with number 3. Number 3 states that we have adopted the vehicle use policy. And if I recall correctly, and I went back to check the video just to make sure, we don't actually have a written vehicle use policy. And we've been advised by counsel, not counsel CIL, but counsel SEL, that we need to adopt the vehicle use policy, put it in writing to indemnify the taxpayers from, any potential accident that could occur where they'd have to come out of pocket. We've answered yes to this.
Okay, so you're talking item number 3?
Yes.
It says, has your municipality adopted a vehicle use policy prohibiting personal use of municipal vehicles except for commuting, and providing that employees authorized to use such vehicles for commuting to from work have a fringe benefit value added to the gross income reported on their employee W-2. That particular policy is found in the employee manual. It's in the employee manual. The only person really subject to that policy is me. And I can tell you that every year I do pay taxes as appropriate, due to the commuting mileage on the car. So that's in our employee manual.
William, just less about you and more about the fact that we've had a conversation in open session and closed session. We've been given guidance. This ties into the much larger vehicle use policy that we're tackling. And, 1 or 2 no answers here, I'm okay with. But if we operate at the lowest possible standard, I don't think that we, our municipality, should operate at the lowest possible standard where we're just, we're taking a conservative interpretation of this. We know that we need to have a much more comprehensive vehicle use policy. This clearly would fall under.
So here's my suggestion on that. I think that there's some legal ramifications that surround the vehicle use and the policy. I think we should request that it gets put on a closed session for at the next meeting so we can discuss this and get some type of policy hammered out one way or the other.
Deputy Mayor, the only problem I have with that is we use that as a stopgap measure. We say we're going to do things, and then we don't do them.
Put it under my name, and I'll make sure that we discuss it.
Isa?
So,
Okay.
I think we're looking at this document. We're looking at the specific questions that they're asking. I am answering these specific questions and answering them as I believe is appropriate and in the light most favorable to Teaneck.
I just want to make sure.
Okay. What are the other?
So the question to that answer is a firm yes. The policy's written. We have it. It says it's written. I just don't have the page in my head right now, but it's there. It's written. We did an employee manual. We created one. We never had one before. We did it several years ago.
No,
and it's in there.
I
understand you're talking about other issues.
As we're working through these, what I don't want us to do is continuously put ourselves in a situation where we answer yes, and because we answered yes, we don't go back and revisit it. And that's what happens. We'll answer yes to something, we know we need to work on it, but because by the letter of what it's saying, we've answered yes, we don't ever discuss it.
Okay.
The other issue is on question number 5. Does the municipality maintain an up-to-date municipal website? Now, this has been an issue that has plagued us, councils past. I don't know how many sets of minutes we have to approve tonight on our agenda. I mean, it was a plethora. But this has been brought to our attention on numerous occasions by members of council and also members of the public. It's been at least in my tenure here in town, this has been an issue in every single checklist. Why do we have a yes here?
Because the answer They're asking you, do you maintain an up-to-date website? They're not asking you if every single item on your website is up to date.
I'm talking
That's-
about the ones that they identify. Bids and RFPs, meeting dates, minutes and agendas for a governing body, planning board, board of adjustment, and all commissions. That is something that we know. We don't keep up to date on the website on a regular basis. We know that.
Do we have
Sometimes are things out of date? Possibly. But are many of these things on the website? Absolutely. The spirit of this is that you maintain a website and you put this type of information on it. And that is what Teaneck is doing. We have an excellent website that probably has more information on it than any other town.
Okay. What's the next item, Councilman?
As it relates to number 10, and I'll bring this up. Actually, number 10 we've answered yes to, but I'd like for this policy to extend to management of the township and our department heads. But I'll bring that up as a...
Yeah, so on that particular one, it does extend to the department heads. The government officers,
So
it says...
as it relates to... The reason I want to bring it up in closed session is because there's some very specific details I want to discuss as it relates to this, to ensure that we're doing fair contracting and so on and so forth. So I'll bring that up in closed session.
Okay, so are we adding that one to closed session?
Number 10.
Mr. Clerk? Isa? Okay, next item. And now we put under his name, not mine.
Number 12, an internal accounting control process. We have in the comments, this is number 12. It says a discussion of the 2014 audit occurred at the August 11th council meeting with the township's auditor. I think this is one of the areas where Councilman Sohn and I had some overlap. So I'll yield to him to discuss 12, and I'll return to my list.
Again, this was raised as an audit issue. I think it's indicative of the fact that we don't have those auditing and control procedures in place. I think one of the main things that my focus was that the best practices are intended to allow us to implement those best practices that provide a most transparent government, that provide an effective and cost-effective government. Many of these things, and I think there's a couple of no's where I'd like to see if we can work our way to a yes, but that we are not only doing these things in spirit, but that we are actually fully, to the best of our ability, complying with them. We have had a discussion, this did come up in the audit. We have yet to have an opportunity to meet to address the changes in procedures, and I think that we need to ensure that these things are addressed, both to address the audit and both to really fully comply with the true essence of number 12 and having those audit and control procedures in place.
Okay.
Number 14, we got to be a firm no on, and that is does our finance subcommittee meet quarterly? Quarterly is underlined, and in our comments, we wrote that the budget subcommittee endeavors to meet quarterly.
Yeah. We wrote, yes, we have a budget subcommittee. The township has a budget subcommittee that meets at least quarterly. Its last meeting was on August 24th, 2015. However, there are times where I put in the last 12 months, we haven't been able to meet quarterly all the time. But we do endeavor to meet quarterly.
Councilman Castle, I think here he's certainly being transparent. He answers yes, and yes with an explanation.
Yes, the question is, do we meet quarterly?
Yeah, I
We met
understand.
last quarter, but for 2 quarters prior to that, we didn't
Right,
meet.
and
Okay, but Jason, I think, let me just say one quick thing.
I just want to clarify. The reason I'm so concerned about these issues is because you're asking us, or by you and the state are asking us to certify that these answers are correct. And there are certain answers here, being on the budget subcommittee, knowing it took 5 months to get a meeting. We're saying yes to these issues when it's clearly a no, and that's an integrity issue.
how many others do you have?
Only a handful,
How many?
but I know that other members of council may have
So
some.
let's finish yours, and then we'll go to the others.
14 is a big one for me.
Okay.
That's a.
Oh, really? I would have thought that was... All right, let's see what these other ones are.
Does anyone else have any? Because I think I have 4 more, but
No, you do it. I'll grab them after you.
26, has your municipality established a chain of command as required by NJAC to ensure appropriate individuals are in place to determine when emergency procurement is necessary, and to ensure that the provisions for emergency purchasing set forth in NJSA are properly implemented? What is our contingency plan in the event that our purchasing agent is out? What is our chain of command? How does that work? Question number 26.
Mr. Manager?
Wait a second. Okay, so this question is asking you, it's not asking you if the purchasing agent's out. It's asking you if you need to make an emergency procurement. So the bid threshold's $40,000. We need to have an emergency sewer repair that's $45,000. We have a procedure in place for handling that. Myself, I would declare, after consultation with the DPW director, I would declare an emergency, tell them to do the work. There's paperwork that has to be filled out, and we coordinate with the purchasing agent to make sure that paperwork is filled out and sent to the state. So we do have a procedure in place, and it happens.
And as it relates to the audit finding about, some of the bids that went out where...
So what happened with the audit finding, the issue was we had an emergency, okay? It was the repair of the bridge, the footbridge that goes over the railroad tracks by Voti Park, okay? The council approved a resolution for, I believe it was $50,000, okay, as an emergency to have that bridge repaired. The paperwork was done. After we received the quote, it came in at $31,000, which was under the bid threshold and able to be approved by the purchasing agent. The purchasing agent thought that he didn't need to send in the emergency because it was under the bid threshold and within his authority. So the auditor says, no matter what the quote comes in at, if you declare an emergency, you have to go through the emergency procedure and fill out that paperwork.
So we now have that, but what you're
that's
saying
what
is
occurred.
we have that procedure in place.
Absolutely.
We've learned from that audit finding. It is not going to creep up on next year's audit as...
What happened was extremely rare. We usually never get approval for the council for 50, and it comes in at 30, the actual repair. So if we had that quote in advance, we would have never come to the council, and it would have been repaired because it's within the purchasing agent's authority to approve that.
Okay. 20, next.
So those are the ones that were most concerning to me.
Okay.
So I'm going to stop there. The others, I'm sure, are going to come up at some point in time, but those are the ones that were most concerning to me.
Okay, well, listen, we appreciate the diligence. I think we all learned a little more tonight. Councilman Sone.
It just turns out, I have a couple of other ones. I think one of the, a couple of ones that most concern me, 28, in preparing your annual budget, does your municipality have a written policy goal for the amount of surplus available in support of municipal operations, and is this goal evaluated annually? I think it really is imperative that we start looking at that, we start looking at multi-year trends on surplus, and that we have that formally written down. If there is a written policy, I haven't seen it yet, and I think that this is something that is really critical, that we ensure that we can meet all the needs that we have in the future regarding surplus.
So on that particular issue, we do have a written policy, okay? Myself and the CFO, we have a guide that we always use and what we want to achieve in surplus. That's between, on the low end, 5% of the operating budget, all the way to 20%. We know that we'll never get to 20. We're probably, maybe 8%. The highest I've ever seen is about 7-8%. We would love to be closer to about 13%, which could improve our bond rating as well. But that's what we try to achieve. And I had the CFO reduce that to writing so that we would be in compliance with this.
Okay.
Just regarding number 32, in developing your multi-year capital plan, is your municipality dedicating sufficient revenues to fund maintenance, repair and eventual replacement of infrastructure. We've had issues with roads. We had a confluence of events where we had an emergency transaction regarding a repair on Forest Avenue that is underway for sewer work. It's very hard for the residents to see the issues with our sewers. It is unfortunately tragically easy for residents to see the lack of dedicated funds to fund the work that we need to do on our streets. Our streets are falling apart. The roads last, the engineer said 12 to 15 years. I've heard shorter numbers. If we do the math with 105 miles of road, we need to be paving several miles of street every single year, and we need to be dedicating those funds. If we are not doing that, if we don't do what's done with the George Washington Bridge and the Golden Gate Bridge, where you start painting and rust proofing on one side, and when you get to the other, you start again, we are going to fall behind, and we are falling behind. And my concern is that we don't have that element in our capital plan, and that we desperately need to be doing that.
Okay. Any other comments on this?
Do we have, and is that an element of our capital plan?
Mr. Manager?
And development areas, your municipality dedicating? This to me is it's a strange question, okay? I think that you could always dedicate more. We could always dedicate more money to this. I would like to see more money dedicated to repairing roads and other infrastructure of the town. So you could always dedicate more. Do I think I can answer yes to the question? I'm going to answer the question yes. To answer it no puts us closer to losing the $8,000. So you could always add more money, and that's the way I look at it. I have to.
I mean, again, as I read the question, this is not, are you trying to dedicate enough funds? It's is your municipality dedicating sufficient revenues? I think we need to sit down. This is not just a nice thing to do. These are questions that are asking us, as a best practice, are we doing these things? If we have, again, I'll ultimately, or hopefully we'll get to the opportunity to look at this, see if we can flip some of the no's to yeses. But I want to be able, certainly for number 32, for the benefit of all those people who drive on Downing Street and some of the other streets in town, who drive on, we heard from residents on Martens at the last meeting. There are many, many streets that are deteriorating. The plan that we have is inadequate to cover that, and we are not doing it. We're not doing it. Not only are we not doing it, we are not doing it as part of a multi-year capital plan. This should be going not only from us, but it should be going to the planning board as required, so that the planning board is looking at this, going through this, that we're working with the engineer to come up with those numbers. And I'm just concerned that the lack of doing this is going to bite us in the behind.
But Councilman, can I
Sure,
just say
go
one
ahead.
thing? I agree with you that we need to pave more roads. I don't believe it's a plan issue or a planning issue. It's a money issue. If the council said tomorrow, William, you have $15 million to pave the roads, believe me, I can get these roads paved like that. It's a money issue. Do we want to commit $15 million? That's all. We can do a simple math calculation. We have 122 miles of road. We could figure out today what it would cost to pave them all. It is a money issue. It's not a plan issue.
Okay. What's next?
And again, my concern is.
But I understand your concern,
No,
and
my
I
concern,
agree
and
with
that
you.
the lack of doing that,
Councilman, so I think we all got the concern.
Sure.
What's the next item?
Number 39, Council, again, regarding waivers. Has your governing body had a thorough and adequate discussion about its current policy regarding payments in lieu of health benefits, its impact on the municipal budget, and whether said payments are still warranted? PL 2010 made a change, again, that reduced that amount from a blanket 50% to 25% or $5,000, whichever is lower, of the health benefit waiver. I think we need to look at this. We need to have that discussion, that thorough discussion, and adequate discussion about that policy, and determine what that numbers should be, so that we are appropriately encouraging employees to use health care from other potential sources, but that we are also protecting our taxpayers by paying an appropriate amount that provides that encouragement. I don't think we have yet had that discussion, and again, I think we should have that discussion. We should visit that, and we should set what those numbers should be, and perhaps the numbers that we have where so many people are collecting 50%. And as the cost of insurance rises, this 50% grows with it. That we set an appropriate amount and that we have that discussion. I do not think that we have had that discussion. Again, it's something where we've answered yes, we need to do this. But this is, as of right now, a no.
Yes.
Just to dovetail that, we're discussing a list right now that could bring in $8,000 for the municipality, right? We spend more than $400,000 each year paying employees to not have insurance. And the only reason that they're able to get that $5,000, $10,000, in some cases $13,000 check is because we haven't had this conversation. So if the impetus to have a conversation to save taxpayers $400,000 is an $8,000 list, we should definitely do that. And just so that the taxpayers and those in the audience are clear, we're not paying people to not have health insurance. We're giving them a check because they have insurance from another source, and we are paying them to not have health insurance in this municipality. Now, I think that one of the important things that we have to understand is that the contribution to health benefits by employees goes up on an annual basis. So for those who say, well, those employees could just drop their health insurance and come onto the township's health insurance that will cost us more. Okay, we've got members of council who have health insurance, and that's fine. If an employee gets health insurance, that's fine. But to make the argument that someone is going to drop their insurance that they're paying for in another place because we're going to either reduce that, the amount of their waiver or eliminate it, I think that's a pretty far-stretched argument. The other aspect is this. We're not even treating all of our employees equally. We had 17 employees who were receiving in excess of what the state mandates is the maximum. And those 17 employees were a small percentage of the 42 employees that are actually collecting this benefit. So at the end of this audit, we took 17 employees who were collecting in excess of $5,000 and we chopped them down to $5,000. We did nothing about the other employees who were receiving in excess of $5,000. And I mean, how are we going to treat our employees unfairly by saying to 17 employees, we're going to cut your benefit, but not cut the benefit to the remaining 42? So I don't think that we need to eliminate it because you know what? At the end of the day, if someone is paying out of pocket for health insurance, like many of us are, or you're paying your deductibles, whatever, and what have you, eliminating that benefit, not necessarily the best idea. We should phase it out. But we can't tell one employee who's collecting $10,000 this year, and that goes up to $10,500 next year because the cost of health insurance goes up. We can't continue to give them a check to not have health insurance when they have health insurance in other places, and then tell other employees you're capped at $5,000. We either need to treat all of our employees equally and give them all $5,000, and that will save the taxpayers roughly $220,000 a year, or we completely eliminate it. I like the former as opposed to the latter. I think that we should equalize it, levelize. It's a council listed item. I'm going to discuss it in greater detail, but we can't continue to treat our employees differently.
Any other items on this checklist?
If I can also go to just some of the no's.
I have a question on that.
Sure, go ahead.
Let me ask a question about the insurance payment. As I understand it, some employees have insurance, health insurance paid for by some other source. We are required, or we are obligated, to pay for health insurance for all the employees. Now, if a person has insurance from another source and they agree not to take the full insurance from Teaneck, we're giving them an amount of money not to pay the whole amount. Is that the understanding?
That's
Yes.
the premise, but
Yes.
that's
I mean, is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
So,
All right, but
so I'm not sure if we're spending more or spending less, but I think it's a complicated question we're not going to be able to answer sitting up here tonight.
Okay. Go ahead. Councilman Son, you have other no's, you said?
So again, I think we do need to have that thorough discussion that is mandated by the
We
best
got it.
practice
Done.
checklist. on terms of some of the questions where we've answered a no. We answered a no on number 6. Does your municipality require its elected officials to attend on an annual basis at least one instructional course? The Board of Education has a thorough system of education and training for its board members. I think that it really is amazing to be able to just come right up on board and sit here on this dais without any training or continuing training whatsoever. And I think that I'd like to encourage us as a council to make that change and implement that change so that we are having
I think
courses of
some of these
continuing
items that are
education.
being brought up, we should really push them to the budget meeting. We shouldn't even be discussed now. I mean, that's what we have the budget discussions for. We have 6 extra meetings, whatever it is. So let's go over some of your other notes.
Okay, so that's not a budget item. That's something that I think at a minimum we should do.
I
In
mean,
terms of
it's
number
gonna-
15.
I assume these courses are not free, so you probably require some type of budget discussion.
In terms of number 15, we need to really start getting working on those audit findings, and not only, closing the loop for previous years, but closing the loop this year so that we are addressing these issues and that we are ensuring that we don't have, as we did this year, have a prior year item come up. I really want to make sure that we set up those meetings and that we start moving ahead. Councilman Castle, and with, unfortunately, the mayor is out this evening. Also, again, regarding number 35.
Can we just for a second, on number 15, one, we have to replace our CFO, or we have to bring in a company that's going to provide us financial services. This is one of those areas where we've answered no, where I have every confidence in the world that we'll answer yes to next year, but I believe this week is the week that we're actually taking a meaningful step to interview financial candidates. So I agree with you that we definitely need to do this. We should have done it long ago. We can't continue to allow our existing CFO, who's doing us a favor of staying on, to continue to, really consume, if not exploit, her time while we keep kicking the can down the road. So tomorrow, I believe we have a meeting as it relates to this. Is it tomorrow, Thursday? It's tomorrow, correct? And I think as early as tomorrow, we might be able to at least move this from a no to no/soon to be yes.
Okay.
Moving on to number 35, healthcare being provided as part of employment started during World War II. Kaiser shipyards were, as other employers, were restricted on offering pay increases due to wage controls during World War II. They asked to offer healthcare, and basically it was viewed as a de minimis contribution. That it was worth so little that it was not worth counting as wages. We live in a day and age where healthcare costs. It costs a lot of money. We are looking at our most common healthcare plan increasing from costing $29,000 per employee to $33,000 per employee, an increase of 14%. We do have elected officials who are receiving this benefit. Are they eligible to receive it? Yes. But I think we have to start looking at how much that costs, which is going to rise to $33,000, and how much is paid for that, which is going to rise to about $800 for this coming year. I think all of us pay healthcare. Healthcare is incredibly expensive. We need to start looking for opportunities to save, and I think this is something where we need to start considering whether we start phasing this out sooner or later, and how much and how we're going to deal with that increase. I've been trying to work the numbers. Our HR Director, Dean Kaczynski, has been remarkably effective in providing that information. But as I look ahead for 2016, I'm looking at that significant increase and how we can best be able to position ourselves to afford and cover that increase.
I agree. We'll talk about it during the budget time. We'll also put on the stipend for the council and reducing it to $1. Any other comments on this?
Yes. Yes.
What
Yes.
action, I'm sorry. What action items are we going to be taking from your best checklist tonight? I mean, are you planning on voting for this, yes or no?
It's not a vote, it's just
Okay,
a
so then
discussion.
It's
Just a discussion.
Okay.
Like, respectfully, Ellie, we can talk about talking about it later, right?
I'm not looking to talk about later. I think some of the items are budget item discussions, and we pushed it to budget item discussions. There's some things that I said we should have clarifications, and we have clarifications. There's some things like the auto policy where I think you should put a comment section. The comment should be put in there. But, I'm just trying to get through the process here. So, you had your list. You said you were done. I went to the Councilman So, and he said he was done. Then you said you're back. You've got more lists.
Well, no.
Let's just try to be somewhat organized with the process. Do you have more items?
I'm going to discuss the health benefit waiver in detail when we come to
So we don't have to
council
talk about it 3 times before you get to when you have it on the council agenda. Do you agree?
Do you have any items?
No, I don't. I'm feeding off of you guys. When you mention something that has a valid point, they jump in and I say it. When you mention something that I think we should be discussing further during budget time, I say it. I don't have any specific.